So you have a good reason for borrowing. You have borrowed correctly. You followed all the things that need to be followed. You've considered all the things, all the factors that are there to be considered. You can still plunge into the trap of debt if you make certain blunders after the money has been disbursed to you. Welcome to Money Reflections. I am your debt and money management coach, Roy Okonji. Now today we reflect on the third category of borrowing blunders, the final category. These are blunders after borrowing. You've gone through the process correctly, you've considered every factor that we spoke about and other factors, and you are assured that you've done the right thing, you've done your due diligence and everything is good. The money has been disbursed to you. There are some blunders you can still make that will cost you. I want to highlight two of these blunders. The first one is diversion of borrowed funds. I know some of you have heard me speak very passionately about diversion of borrowed funds. It's just because this thing is real. Diversion of borrowed funds is a problem, is a big mess. It will affect you as a personal borrower and also as a business borrower. I've done a separate video on diversion of borrowed funds and shared some stories here. Stories that some of you have doubted, but those are true stories, real life stories, right? Diversion of borrowed funds is a dangerous thing. You see, when you divert borrowed funds, if you had a very good reason for borrowing, and that reason dictated the amount that you needed to borrow, there is no justification why you should divert part or the entire of these borrowed funds. You see, what you're doing is that you're creating a future man-made emergency. Right? It will actually not be an emergency. That's why I'm calling it a man-made emergency, because the defining word in the definition of an emergency is the word unforeseen. But when you take part of the money that was meant for a good reason, because you've gone through the process, so it was a good reason, and you use part of that money to do another thing, then when the time for executing that purpose comes, then you'll find yourself in trouble because you'll not be able to execute the purpose fully. And that might begin to force you into expensive borrowing because the reason is still looking at you. I shared a story of someone who borrowed money for school fees and they diverted the money for school fees, entertained friends, and the money was finished. The truth is, schools still opened. And when schools opened, this person definitely felt the need to look for money urgently. It might have looked like an emergency for him at that time, but it was not an emergency because he already knew schools will open, but he chose to divert the borrowed funds. I've shared stories of business people who diverted borrowed funds. And I've said many times, when your bank qualifies you for a business loan, the bank has analyzed the performance of your business today. And the bank has done projections and imagined that if we gave you this money and you utilize this money the way you have indicated in your plan, then we expect that your business is actually going to grow. And therefore, your revenues will grow, your profitability will grow. And therefore, you have a bigger room from which we will pick our repayment amount as the bank and leave you with some money as the business. And therefore, the business will be scaling up. Now, when that money is given to you and you divert a portion or the entire of it into something else, you're creating trouble. Because when the time for repayment comes, the bank will be expecting money. And because you need to fulfill your obligation, you will start taking money from the current cash flow of the business, not the projected after you have executed your reason for borrowing. And that begins to put pressure on the business. And before you know it, your business is struggling. It is as basic as that, okay? I'm not going into many stories today, but that is just the basic of it. Diversion of borrowed funds is a recipe for future default. Diversion of borrowed funds is a recipe for future financial struggle, whether you are in business or you are you are borrowing for personal reasons. Okay. Now, some business people have argued, what if I want to divert this money and still put it in business into something else? Well, a few cases will work, but many cases will still not work. Look at it this way. You went to your bank, you have an electronics shop. Okay, so you went to your bank and you gave them a plan. World Cup was just approaching, and you told your bank that you want to borrow money for working capital, you want to increase the stock of television sets because you anticipate that many people will be looking for television sets now that World Cup is just around the corner. Good proposal. The bank looked into it and the bank approved, and you got some money to increase the stock of your television sets. When the money landed in your hands, you remembered that you could actually stock some mobile phones. So yes, you've not diverted the money out of the business, but you've done what I call intra-business diversion of borrowed funds, which is still dangerous for many people. So yes, we will see the stock of mobile phones, but chances are very high that in that season, mobile phones are not moving as fast as television sets will be moving. So you are likely to have some dead stock, but the bank will be asking for its money 30 days after they've disbursed your money. And that means that you might begin to eat into the business's existing funds, because whatever you did with the other money has not started bringing in money to a level that can comfortably finance the repayment of the debt, and that will be dangerous. The second thing that is a blunder in this category is neglecting to fulfill your repayment obligation. The process of borrowing does not end when you receive the money. The process of borrowing ends after you have repaid the last cent of the borrowed funds. Now, I'm talking about neglecting to repay. Neglecting means you are able to pay, but suddenly repayment has become a burden. You feel that you're doing them a favor by repaying their money. That becomes dangerous. You see, in these days, with the advent of CRB listing, and things like those, in future, you might actually be in need, but you will be denied credit because of your conduct in the past. Okay, so you have to be careful. As long as you have borrowed money and you have the means to repay, please repay the money you borrowed. Repay to the last coin. That makes you a responsible borrower. That makes you a borrower who knows what borrowing is all about. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel and press the notification bell so that you don't miss out every time new episodes are coming up. If you have enjoyed these episodes, if this conversation has spoken to you, please like this video, drop us a comment, ask a question. I'll be glad to look at it, and feel free to share this with your network. You can do better.